Hi everyone. So I'm going to start by just saying something quickly about what this channel definitely isn't, which is definitely not lessons, really. If I was planning a lesson, I would take a lot more care about the structure and the level of what I'm saying and all of that kind of stuff. If you want to look at lessons, I mean, I've got my Learn Gypsy Jazz and Swing Guitar channel, which I'll put a link to below, which will probably mostly interest people who want to learn gypsy jazz and swing guitar. This is more about contemporary stuff. I don't really consider myself to be such a professional player of contemporary jazz, although I'm certainly trying to get my chops together. And I'm not really sort of aiming this lesson at people who want to learn the style. It's kind of more like me. I don't know that there really is a one style of contemporary jazz stuff, but it's more me kind of just going over what I've been practicing and verbalising what I've been thinking about. And because it's contemporary jazz, I'm going to switch my MXR carbon copy analog delay pedal on. Sounds like this. That's very contemporary. I mean, it's not like a hat that you can put on and just go, yeah, no, I'm going to play contemporary jazz. It's a certain concept harmonically, which I think is quite different from bebop. And I just want to sort of talk about it, and maybe this stuff is obvious to people who've kind of really got into it, which is fair enough. But anyway, I'll show you what I've been playing around with and what I've been thinking about. So, if you watch my very quick bebop video, you'll see there's a sort of very fast-paced kind of summary of what I've been doing in terms of the bebop stuff, which has been, you know, and also early music as well, which is almost classical, almost common practice use of scales, use of added notes to kind of make sure that everything ends up on the beat, and very, I would say, like, it's very sparing use of anything which is too far outside of the key, by which I mean, in bebop, if we're going to play over a secondary dominant, we basically just do as little to the key scale as we can possibly get away with. So, if I'm in the key of C major and I encounter an E7 9 chord, I'm not going to play the E altered scale because that's got loads of notes which aren't in the key. All I have to do to play that scale is take my C major scale and then raise the G up to a G sharp, right? And that gives us that sound. If I incorporate a bit of a next one. That's not how I framed it in my video, because in my video it's more about taking the backdoor dominant, which is actually how I tend to think of it. So in this case we'd be going from C major, then we go to G7, so C major play from G to G, raise the G up to a G sharp, and then we go into C, Mixolydian, and then raise the C to a C sharp. So that's what we were doing anyway. Watch the video and there's some more examples of that. And everything stays pretty much within the key. We only alter the scales as much as they need to, and the system is actually really elegant and has, I think, quite not a lot to do with chord scale theory. I think, like, people always go on about the altered scale, but I would say altered scale use in bop, at least in the music of Charlie Parker, Bud Powell, etc., that I've come across is extremely it's unusual. It's remarkable in the old sense, in the sense that you would go, oh, I remark upon that use of the tritone substitute or the altered scale or whatever. Tritone substitute is really another version of the altered scale, isn't it, when you think about it? So, tritones you get, but they're usually very clearly spelled out with, you know, some triads or pentatonics or something. But it's kind of a special effect. The main bulk of what you get in bebop is really just common practice scale use. I mean, the way Barry Harris always says it is that the harmony is classical. The harmony is classical. I don't think he really believes there's such a thing as jazz harmony. His stuff is all based as much on Chopin and Bach as it is on, you know, Bud Powell. And he sees Bud Powell as an evolution of that tradition, as far as I can tell. I mean, I don't want to put words in Barry's mouth, but, you know, that's the impression I get. So when it comes to doing this kind of modal stuff, this is a different mindset. So if I was to take that same chord progression and think of it modally, maybe I'd use the Lydian on the first chord, and then a second chord I would use E7 altered. I'm playing all of me, by the way. This would be obviously A altered, D Dorian. Now, I'm already kind of getting into this slightly intervallic sound, and that's really what I want to talk about. Because the thing is that the scales that we use in bebop all have what we call avoid notes in them. If you read the Mark Levine Jazz Theory book, you'll know what I'm talking about. Avoid notes, or handle with care notes, are notes which jar with the underlying chord. So if I play, for example, a C major 7th, and I put that on the freeze pedal, so it's just hanging around like a bad smell, I can then play the Lydian scale over the top of it, and any note I pause on sounds absolutely bloody delicious. There's nothing wrong with it at all. You know, if I was being a little bit more kind of out, I could even use the Lydian augmented scale a little bit. So it sounds a bit like this. Even that doesn't really have avoid notes in, even though you'd think the 5th would clash against the sharp 5th. That's a very nice sound, you know. Anyway, so that's all lovely and very fun to play around with. But if I play the major scale, you'll hear that right away. The 4th has a really strong desire to resolve. The other notes are fine, but that 4th is what we would call an avoid note. If I play the pentatonic, there's no avoid notes. So that's interesting in itself. You know, the reason why that happens, I think, that the 4th, it actually creates movement. You can hear those chords moving to different places within the same key. There's a very strong sense of tonic, subdominant kind of movement. And that is all generated by having that weird F note. So the chords that do have an F in, such as F and D minor, B half diminished, beg your pardon, kind of exist in this sort of subdominant world, whereas the ones which don't have an F in, they exist in, you know, this kind of tonic, static world, and then the ones like a dominant chord like a G7 has a strong desire to return back to the 1 and so forth, and you can use like chromatic chords to intensify the effect. And that's how tonal harmony works. So I don't suppose there's any surprise that the modal system starts to disappear at about the same time as we start to get like triads and tertial harmony, which is around the 15th to 16th century. So we're looking at sort of late medieval to early Renaissance music. The modes start to disappear. People don't really want static music anymore in that way, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, there are, you know, more complicated than that, I'm sure. But yeah, it's interesting anyway. So when we're doing this stuff, we want to avoid those scales that have that inherent kind of dynamism to them. We want something static. We want what I would call a colour scale. So the way it goes on the whole is that over a major you would put a Lydian, and over the minor you would put a Dorian or a melodic minor. Sounds good. I'll just play a melodic minor for you if we use the raised 7th. It's this kind of mysterious James Bondy kind of sound, and we go. So you've got to make a real effort to try and learn the scales all over the neck. And I would regard this as very much as a kind of pianistic approach to playing the guitar, because on the piano you just have to know where the black notes are, and you're fine. You can play up and down the octaves, do whatever intervallic stuff you want. On the guitar it's actually really hard, and you have to spend years studying the scales up and down and really make yourself learn them and get that fluency over the neck, and be able to, you know, plane or transpose intervallic shapes through the key, so through the scale even. So in the case of this one, we'd be thinking. So I still have to think about it. Probably still got it wrong, you know. It's kind of interesting. I mean, that's a hard sound. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. It's a hard sound to get into your head, especially if you're jumping around in it. So that's the kind of stuff that you have to do if you want to get that kind of thing together. And it's a very contemporary sound, and it's kind of, to my ears, it has a lot in common with how Kurt Rosenwinkel and all that lot play. I don't think it's a very good way to start your playing. I think you've got to spend a while looking at chord tones. I mean, used to be dead set against scales. I used to see them as irrelevant, but actually they're great sounds, and I've had a lot of fun playing around with them. But I'm really, really glad that I went through that period of just being obsessive about arpeggios and decorated arpeggios, because I think it's given me the structure. And I think if you have fantastic ears, for example, if you're, I don't know, Willem Simcock, who I think has always been a very modal player, but is obviously musically fantastic, you know, a world-class player. He learned jazz after spending years of studying classical, so he just goes straight in and goes, bang, you know, that's fine, you know, I can play that now. So, I mean, for me, people like, you know, you can learn modal theory and play that way, and a lot of great players play that way, but for me, I had to go through the chord tone thing, and bebop and swing and all that kind of stuff, and I'm really glad that I did before coming back to this, because I feel it's easier now, and I'm quite sad that I spent the early days, you know, being interested in chords when I should have just been working really hard on, being interested in scales when I should have just been working really hard on chords. But, you know, there you go. I mean, you are, you know, that's the way things panned out. So that's interesting. I think, you know, that all that kind of sound is very nice. So yeah, you really want to avoid those scales with the avoid notes, as it were, because it just becomes a lot harder to use them. And pentatonics are good as well, and that's it really. I mean, I'm just going to sort of show you some of the things that I've been practicing very quickly. I like this kind of random concept. So instead of playing, you know, patterns, I mean, patterns are good. So I might play like seconds and fourths. Like that maybe. Sorry, it wasn't very well, excuse me. You know, or actually with a raised fourth maybe. After a while I find it's hard to get the articulation really good like that. After a while, you know, of course you can play simple intervals through the scales. You can play, for example, maybe you can play simple intervals, but I clearly can't. But you get the idea. That's the way I need to practice, obviously, the fourths through the mode. So, that's major. It's quite good to do this by ear, though, and try not be too much within patterns, so I can hear that fourth is wrong, right? But then the next step beyond that is just to practice random scales, I think. I'm not really thinking about any patterns there at all. There might be patterns, there probably is, because we tend to create patterns as That's really fun. Sorry, got that fourth wrong again. I can do that all day, really. There's triads and things in there, and there's fourths and so on, and it's not ever going to be truly random. But you can set yourself little things, little tasks like just one note of string. So you can try, I don't know. Just things like that, just to try and break it up, maybe string skips. Clearly I want to avoid it all the time. So that's kind of how I practice that, and as you can hear, it is very much a work in progress. But it's kind of, it came to me these kind of... Sorry, let me play that properly. This kind of stuff, that you really like Kurt Rosenberg will play, and you just look at it and you think, what pattern is there? There isn't any pattern, and actually it's just random, I think, but it sounds great because it's just going through the mode, and I think that's really cool, just like doing that. You can use it harmonically as well. I do it for the Anyway, I can see potential for this kind of approach, and it's very different from the sort of bebop and swing stuff that I do, and I just thought I'd share that with you. I don't think I've really got much else to say, other than, you might have fun with that. But I would say that this way of using scales is very, very different from the way of using scales that you would find in bebop, or more kind of perhaps earlier styles of jazz. Even some of the chord scale stuff, I think, is less intervallic than this. I think this is pretty contemporary sounding stuff. It's very interesting to me anyway. I'm really enjoying practicing it. I hope you enjoyed that video. Thanks very much for watching.